So we actually got another major update this year after the last. Except the only thing major about it is that it's majorly disappointing. Got him. Like how I did last update, I want to make a full, comprehensive video talking about everything added this patch and talk about how good or useful it actually is. I'll first go over all the more universal changes and then we'll talk about each individual nation and their vehicles. But first I want to say just thank you for even taking the time to watch my video. And if you do enjoy it, I'd really appreciate it if you do subscribe. If I can get to 500 subs before the end of the year, that'd be great. This first section will be pretty short. The player profile has gotten some changes that no one will see. There are some new titles and you can now select a favorite vehicle to display on your profile. Custom gun sights have gotten some more minor additions. The color of the range-finding progress bar can be customized. The reload rate and gun ready indicator are now separate, and the thickness of the gun sight itself can now be adjusted. I hope Gaijin keeps these changes going. Aircraft tracked by radar now have an altitude indicator, and this has also been added. I don't know what this means, but it's here. As you probably noticed when you opened the game, the entire hangar has gotten a Christmassy overhaul. There are presents and decorations everywhere, as well as a bunch of people that you can click on, and you'll either throw a snowball at them or they start dancing. Very cool. Compared to the last update, we actually got a new map this time. Attica. Set in Greece, if you couldn't guess from all the ruins, and looking visually quite nice, if a bit repetitive with the terrain. I do like the new visual standard they set last update, and I'm happy to see that the new maps are still on a similar level. Now I have to admit that at the time of recording this, I haven't played on this map yet. But it does look extremely small, especially considering the fact that this map is available for all tiers, including top tier. Not to mention the map is extremely open. From gas there is basically no cover, and the little cover that does exist can be destroyed very easily. Though that part is historically accurate, I suppose. Again, I haven't played on this map yet, but it doesn't look very fun to play on, in my opinion. Air players have got us some nice changes though. The maximum BR range has been increased to 14.0 for air battles. I hope they'll decompress the tiers a bit in the future, as for now only the American F-15E and Israeli F-15I Ram will be moved to 14.0, together with the new Eurofighters and Rafale. This does mean, however, that Russia, Japan, China and Sweden now technically don't have top tier jets. And these countries now can't get the research bonus for getting an end-of-the-line aircraft for some reason. Air players get quite a bit in return though. Mechanics around AI aircraft in both arcade and realistic air battles have been reworked a bit. Tickets now only get deducted for player-on-player kills. A player killing an AI or vice versa will no longer cost either side tickets. AI aircraft that spawn later in the match will now also prioritize attacking ground targets instead of just whatever's closest. So they're often a lot easier to kill now. Now, for gas players in ground battles, one of the hardest things was spotting targets, and this was already very easy. This has now been made even easier. Both ground and air units can now switch their minimap between the ground and air version. For ground units, this really doesn't change much, apart from now making it somewhat easier that you know where air spawns are. But air players will now know everything that's going on the ground. In addition to this, aircraft now get the ability to set points of interest on the minimap, which they can then see in third person. I can't even comprehend how retarded this change is. This might be the worst addition to the game in recent memory. Not only was using gas already way too easy, this just feels like such a middle finger to all the players that were rightfully complaining about how game-ruiningly strong aircraft are in ground battles. Another change that is nice is that players will now get pretty much instantly kicked when damaging allied nukes. I don't know what went through the heads of the people at Gaijin Entertainment with this gas change, man. But I can't wrap my head around it. Let's just move on to the vehicles. For an update so air-focused, it's a bit surprising that America doesn't get any. So let's move straight to the ground vehicles. First we get the M44, a artillery piece mounted on the M41 Walker Bulldog chassis, sitting at 4.0 with a 155mm howitzer and a very mean high explosive shell. Due to the fact that you're sitting on a M41 chassis, you're actually very nimble. Combine this with the fact that your HE shell can kill literally anything, and you can actually up-tier this thing a decent bit, which is fun. Though you have a lot of crew, they're very exposed. Combined with the fact that you're an open top means you're everything but survivable. Still, very cool vehicle, might be my favorite addition this update, even though it is a bit unfinished. Second and last new American vehicle is the RDF LT, a prototype very similar to the HSTVL as a $70 premium at 11.7. This thing is not great. It's essentially just a worse HSTVL. You do get more ammo, but you're much slower. Not to mention how incredibly unfinished this thing is. Even the HSTVL man himself doesn't like how this thing has been added, and he has a much more detailed video about what an absolute mess this thing is. I would not recommend buying this thing at all. Last change for America is that all M60A1s, including the Italian one, now have their reverse gear changed back to how they were before last update, and are again very, very bad. Moving to Germany, they get the star of the show, the Eurofighter. It has an engine performance comparable to the F-15E, but gets a much better turn rate. It gets access to AIM-9L/I, which are comparable to the AIM-9Ms, and it gets AIM-120Bs, at 12.7 for ground or 14.0 for air. This thing was also a bit unfinished on the release. Yeah, are you noticing a pattern here? For ground, we finally got the Panzerhaubitze 2000. This was one of the vehicles I was most excited for to be added. Real ones know. It sits at 7.7 with a laser, proxy shell, no thermals, but it does get smoke launchers, in contrast to a lot of other artillery vehicles. For the rest, Germany gets a Bundeswehr M44 and a Soviet Strela 10M, as well as something new they're trying out. You can now buy a pack containing 2 Tiger 1s and a Ostwind 2, all S premiums. But what's so unique about these vehicles, you ask? I'm glad you asked. Both Tigers are identical to the H1 in the tech tree, except for a couple of things. The first one is the Ost, or East variant. It gets a bit of track armor on the front and piles of woods on the side, as well as a technically not Nazi flag and the late war German camos that no other Tiger H1 gets access to. The second West variant gets more track armor, full camo netting, and a horseshoe. However, probably one of the nicest changes about both these Tigers is the removal of the hull smoke launchers the regular H1 gets, that always get in the way of aiming, all the while not even working. Lastly, there's the Ostwind 2 Ost, being identical to the regular Ostwind 2 apart from this decal and camo netting. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this. I know Gaijin does this purely to make more money, but this really is not the worst way to do it. And $35 for the entire pack really isn't a terrible deal, especially when compared to some of their other deals. One thing is for sure, and that is that the average IQ of German mains will now drop even further. And though, relative to other premiums, this is a very solid option for new players, I'm not sure if I'd recommend it. You really don't get much unique, and I would only get it if you just love the Tiger one. This is not all for Germany though. They also get a couple of blue water ships. The first one is the premium Z4 Zerstörer at 4.3, available for 1115 Golden Eagles, armed with 4 127mm guns and better armor than other German ships at the BR. The other is the Ersatz York at 7.0 with 4 380mm guns, 12 150mm guns and 50 torpedoes. The only other notable change is the Störer Emo being moved down from 4.3 to 4.0, which I don't think will have a positive effect for the Störer, as it will now face even more light tanks. Russia gets the Su-33 at 12.3 for ground and 13.0 for air, as a squadron vehicle. Cool. The Su-33 has a very similar flight performance to the Su-27, but now has no guided air-to-surface ordnance. For ground, Russia gets the BMD-4M at 9.3 as a $60 premium. And as far as I'm aware, this thing is actually mostly finished. Compared to the existing event BMD-4, it gets additional composite armor that can be removed, and a stronger engine to compensate. It however loses the fantastic reverse gear of the regular BMD-4. Lastly, for the USSR, we get this battleship. A British ship sitting at 7.0 armed with 4 15-inch guns. Moving to Britain, and I'll be honest, we're through most of the unique vehicles now. Britain gets a Eurofighter, an M44 and an Indian version of the Strela 10M. The only unique vehicle Britain gets is the HMS Rodney at 7.0. A very unique ship with a total of 9 16-inch guns in 3 separate turrets, all in front of the superstructure. The Rodney also gets 10 622mm Mark I torpedoes. Other notable changes include the Challenger 3 changing position in the tech tree, now sitting before the Black Knight and 2E, and the South African Rooivalk and Super Hind getting detailed cockpits. Japan of course gets an entire new subtree, a full TIE line of aircraft. This includes the F-84G-21RE, Alpha Jet A, Alpha Jet TH, A7E, AV-8S, the late version, compared to the premium early one, the F5A, the F5T SCU, the F-16A OCU, and the JAS-39C. All these aircraft are added at the end of the interceptor line, apart from the A7E and AV-8S, which have been added to the fighter line. The only Japanese vehicle Japan gets is another M44. China gets the HQ-17 at 11.3, an upgrade to the Tor M1, which has now been moved down to 11.0. Compared to the Tor, the HQ-17 gets better missiles. Additionally, the model for both the Reserve and Premium T-26 have been updated to now look like the Model 1933, with a roof-mounted machine gun. This is an awesome change in my opinion. The Eurofighter, M44 and Strela 10M have been added to the Italian tech tree as well as the Panzerhaubitze 2000 but cooler. This is the Hungarian variant as a $50 premium pack, with its unique feature being of course the camo netting. Again, the only unique vehicle Italy gets is a ship, the RN Ghibli for Coastal Fleet. A 4.0 gunboat with 2 100mm guns, a ton of 20mm and 4 torpedoes. The other star of the show is the French Rafale CF3, sitting at 12.7 or 14.0. One of its most unique features is the new AASM ordnance. Basically upgraded bombs that you can put different seeker heads on, including fire and forget. We get a tech tree version of the VBCI, still at 9.3, now with a 25mm instead of the 30mm, which is overall less powerful but has a faster fire rate. This version does lose the crewless turret, with the gunner now sitting in the turret, but in return it gets soft-kill active protection system. For naval, France gets the La Galissonière at 5.7 with 9 152mm cannons and better armor, and the ARL-44 is now classed as a heavy tank instead of a tank destroyer, which no one wanted. For the banal looks, we get another M44. It doesn't even get any unique camos, just the French ones. We don't even get a Dutch Panzerhaubitze. For the rest, all we got is a Dutch AH-64D as a $60 premium. I really don't get why we didn't get a Dutch Panzerhaubitze. I mean, it's not like the French tech tree doesn't have place for it. The AUF F1 really is not on par with any of the other more modern artillery vehicles in my opinion, but whatever. Lastly, Sweden and Israel, which both get one whole new vehicle. Sweden gets the CV90 Mark IV at 10.7. Armed with a 30mm you were already familiar with, and now spikes. You also get add-on armor and a better engine to compensate. Israel gets the Nammer Schrikken, sitting at 11.0 after the other Nammer. It gets the same hull as the regular Nammer, a different turret but with the same exact weaponry and still crewless. The main unique feature about this version is the trophy active protection system it gets. As you could see, this update was pretty air-focused. Again! And it also wasn't very big. But that I really don't have a problem with. I don't really care how big an update is as long as the content in it is good. And in an update that was dropped this soon after the last, I didn't expect there to be much content. But that leaves the question. Was the content in this update any good? As you could see throughout this video, a lot of stuff was very rushed. Because Gaijin just really wanted 5 updates this year, I guess. I mean, I'm pretty sure this was the first time vehicles from the previous update were still marked as new, together with the new ones. Most vehicles this update were either copy-pasted or unfinished, and the mechanic changes were some good and other times terrible. Can't say I'm too disappointed, as again I didn't expect much from this update in the first place, and also I'm used to it by now. 4 out of could be better.